Hi guys, Chris here from Super Savvy Travelers. I know you guys just loved part 1 of the DauvO interview, and we have part 2 coming up, and DauvO and I discuss Italian auctions, and I'm seeing more and more of these, so you really want to stay tuned. Well, let's touch a little bit on the auctions because that really intrigues me. I'm really sort of like, okay, you know, we love the real estate, and we're actually doing some more things and looking at that. But I'm really intrigued by the auction process. So I watched your video, and I saw the website that you went to. I couldn't find anything similar for Southern Italy. I'm sure it's there. I just probably have to look for it. But kind of walk us through without, you know, redoing the whole video, because I'm going to send everybody to your video. Just an idea of how that process goes.
No, there are a number of things to look out for because, just as you would know, when you buy property in Italy, you need to make sure that all the ducks are in the row, right, in the straight row, however they say that. In auctions, it's even more important because you're buying the property as is, and there's no like ability to negotiate saying you fix that and then I will buy it, right? There's none of that. So you have to know exactly what you're getting into, but if you know where to look, you can find some really good opportunities. And there's a ton of people that make money off of the auctions every day. I mean, the Italians, I've been to real estate conferences done by Italians on this exact subject. So there are a lot of people interested in it, and it's because there's about 400,000 auctions just for 2020.
Wow.
And yeah, anyway, so let's get to the process like you're saying. What I usually do, and I've actually set up I made a little checklist, and I've been sharing that with people. If anyone wants to check that out, I'll give the I'll give the link to Chris, and she can put it in the description.
Yeah.
But what I typically do is I look for, I define what I want, but because every real estate investor needs to understand what they're willing to invest in and what they're not willing to invest in before they make any decisions.
Right.
And so after you've determined this is like paramount, right? You always start with the location when it comes to the auctions. It's not like you can say, I just want a villa somewhere in Italy. You have to say, I want to search this province because there are a few websites that compile all of the auctions together, but typically they are separated amongst various websites, and so you need to know which website to look on.
Okay.
For me, I look on the Tribunale di Lodi, the Lodi court website, because they still manage all of their own court auctions, and that's where I live, so it works for me. What you do is you go and you can filter results based on price. You can order it by the date of the auction. Usually you only have 2, maybe 3 months to make a real decision. If it's a good deal and you see it on auction, then you need to participate. But there is also the chance that if it doesn't seem quite that good of a deal, that you could just wait for the auction and nobody would participate. It would go what they call deserta. And the way it works here is that auction would rebound in maybe 4 to 6 months, and you could then purchase it at a discounted price of 25%.
Wow.
And so that's the strategy most people use here in Italy, is that they just don't rush off to buy anything that just because it looks cute, but they wait for it to get down to a pretty decent discount, and then the races start. So.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. So what kind of properties? I mean, are these repossessed properties, or what kind of a property goes into auction?
Well, it can be a number of things. The bankruptcy auction, right? The bankruptcy is people not being able to pay for their mortgage, and it takes a number of years to actually auction off a property due to the type of process. But more or less what has to happen is a third party to this real estate transaction has to decide that they want to recuperate expenses, whether it be the bank, it could be a homeowners association. Here it's called a condominio.
Yeah.
some auctions are due to failure in business, where maybe a partner, they've lost everything and they have to file, they have to liberate themselves, liquidate, right? Or they're forced into this action. And so they might have lost something in Milan, but because they own property in Lecce or Rome, all of those things have become liquidated underneath a specific jurisdiction.
Oh, I see.
So another reason is due to police seizure when they take property away for criminal activity. And I don't personally invest in those types of properties because I know very little about them, and so I usually avoid that.
Now, when you do the auctions and you look at them, do you know the reasons for the auction? I mean, do they ever say, "Oh, this one was seized by the police," or "This was a sheriff's sale"? We call it a sheriff's sale when it's been repossessed.
Yeah, you can usually determine what kind of what is the purpose for the auction. For example, every single auction, just like it has a custodian, every auction is they call it a perito. An inspector goes out and judges the state of the property at the moment the auction begins. Like I said, it takes a few years, so it could be 4 years ago that the inspection was made. But in that inspection report, you can see how much was owed to the bank, or like if the bank had how much rights or how much they could claim if this auction was rewarded to someone, and if there were any like secondary positions. You see other, and we can talk about pitfalls, because in this inspection report, you see a number of pitfalls to avoid as well. But it's all in Italian. You have to read through, and you can see like the size and the history of who owned it, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's very cool. That's actually quite a lot of information to make a decision on. Very awesome.
Yeah, and that is the crucial information. Like pretty much all you've got is to see it with your eyes and use this report, and then you just go with your gut, I guess.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. So your house that you're living in right now was an auction, was it not?
It was in 2014, I guess. We picked up this property on auction. We ended up, I think it was March we participated, and we moved into it in August, like on the 1st of August.
Wow, wow, and that's great for your auctions. Now, I'm just going to ask you a quick question on auctions. In America, a lot of times you're not allowed to go into the property to see it before you make a bid. Is that the same in Italy?
Here in Italy, they actually have a whole setup where you can see inside the property. Every single property has a custodian that is assigned. You have the name, the phone number of this responsible party that will schedule a site inspection, whether or not there's someone living in it currently. So I've seen both situations where someone was still in the property and we had to respect their time and be polite in the home, and it was just a very brief site inspection, and other times where it was completely liberated and you could ask questions and browse any portion of the property that you wanted to.
Okay, great. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, so tell me a little bit about things you want to really avoid in an auction.
Well, as far as we were talking about the inspection report, and inside the inspection report, the very first thing to be aware of is that not every auction is 100% of the property. And so you go in there and there will be specific words that talk about millesimi, which would be 1,000/1,000 millesimi, or 1/1 of the property. And if you see that, that's a good thing. That means it's the entire thing. If you see a poor proportion, that just you're like, what is this? I don't know, move on. That means that there were more than one property owner, and only that portion is being auctioned off. And those situations are not good to get into. They're really quite bad, actually, because you're the new guy coming in, and these other owners probably are unhappy about the situation, right?
Yeah.
So okay, that's number one.
So you should look at 1/1, and that's good.
That's a good thing, or 1,000 over 1,000, because they usually talk about millesimi. or 1,000. Millesimi means like thousands, thousandths, and so it talks about like the total ownership of even like HOAs are split up into millesimi, and so you know what kind of bills to pay. Anyway, so speaking about HOAs, you can see the HOA fees. Now, one thing to be aware of when buying an auction is that there are 2 years worth of HOA fees due, the current year and the previous year, even if they haven't been paid. But most likely the auction's been going for 3, 4, 5 years and they haven't been paid. So the court has deemed that you have to pay the current and the previous year. So if you get like €33,000 property, a €33,000 property, you might be paying like €2,000 a year times 2 in addition to that. And that's okay. That's an obligation, but there's a way to avoid it. And the way to avoid it is just not to invest in an HOA-owned property, right?
Right, that makes total sense. Okay, good.
And so that's your choice. If you want something that is more maintained, perhaps an HOA, but they're a little bit hectic sometimes. So buying an independent villa or at least a smaller fourplex, sometimes they don't have that type of organization set up.
Right, right. That's a very good point. We found that too. You know, HOAs could be an entire nightmare. So
one last thing that's very important is that the inspection report is done so that the court will know if there is anything that was modified that shouldn't have been.
Okay.
It's common in Italy to do your own work. Over the years, you change a window, you do a thing, right? And if you didn't report it to the community, then there's most likely a building permit fee to pay, and a penalty. And so depending on what they find, they'll tell you this needs to be fixed because it's illegal. Like you just have to tear it out and start over kind of thing, or all you have to do is register it with the city so that it's on the floor plan the city has documented.
I see. Okay. So it could be relatively inexpensive, but it could also be a huge nightmare.
It could be. And now the estimate that you'll see there will be a high estimate because they didn't check prices. They just threw some numbers in there. But the idea that someone added a bathroom that's just non-hygienic or whatever shouldn't be there. Or maybe someone added, I guess, a sobalco, like a second floor, and the height of the ceiling is too low. They'll make you rip out the whole second floor. And so it would seem like a big property, but then you have to rip out that floor, and it becomes a half the size. Right. It could be a deal breaker.
Right. All that square footage goes away. That makes sense. Okay, good. Good. Those are things that I wouldn't have, of course, I look at it and go, okay, cracks on the wall, foundation issues, those are pretty easy to see, but what you told us is like super vital information. Yeah,
these are pretty specific things, but obviously with the things you're talking about, cracks in the walls, also those, I haven't seen a house in Italy that didn't have a crack in the wall at this point, but
I know.
You can fix that, it's okay. But if it's on the structural wall, it's a little bit more concerning. Speaking of structural things, when you're thinking about finding a good deal, you might see a really low price and it seems like an amazing deal, but there is a certain quality to not surpass, right? Or to not lower yourself below. Right. And what I mean by that is that the roof is a big structural project. It might seem just like to go up there and fix some shingles, but due to the expenses involved in scaffolding, plan of secure safety, architects, the geometra, all this technical stuff that has to be planned out before you can even do it for the safety of the people, it becomes a lot less of a deal if you have to do a roof remodel, such as changing the beams, or if it's just about organizing the roof tiles, then it's okay. But if there are serious problems with the structure of the roof, that could be a deal breaker as well. Yeah, that makes total sense because, we're in a hill town, and I've seen some of the most amazingly brilliant scaffolding ever
because I never would be able to figure out how they could get access to stuff like that. I mean, it's amazing what they think of, but it's a lot of work.
And they
So,
can be costly,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah. Well, even getting the materials in and out, on those little
Yeah,
vias, like, we don't have streets and they can't take a dump truck right in front of the
that's
property. They
true.
take this little miniature Ape dump truck with all that stuff in it. It's just really fun to watch.
Yeah,
So.
it's a different masterpiece in and of itself. The whole planning of
Yeah.
materials and scheduling with the public. So
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty wild. It's pretty amazing to watch. I mean, I'm just in awe of how these guys create these masterpieces of, like, and this is mostly what I've seen, that they have an artistic bent to them, right? They're craftspeople. They're not just workers, they're not just wall builders, because I'll notice, like, like in our roof terrace, Salvatore, our builder, he did the coping on the side, and then he left it empty in the middle. He put broken tile in it, and then made like this mosaic on the top of the wall that you look over. And I'm like, wow, this is really awesome. Like all these little touches they put
beautiful.
in. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
it's really cool. I love that. So.
Well, yeah, that's the advice that I have to share. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of mental attitudes that a lot of Italians just want to do their own thing. They don't want to be controlled, and so you might receive advice to just follow a different path, but you really need to make sure to follow at least the advice of a geometra, and whatever the geometra says is usually correct standards. And so they're a good resource to ask questions to. An architect is basically another step above the geometra.
Yeah. Okay, good. So tell me about this course that you've been working on. I know you've been putting a lot of work into it, about the auctions and whatnot. I myself am fascinated by it. So can you let us know what's happening on that line?
Sure. Not a lot of people know about the course. I've been actually working on it for a number of years now. I put it on hold so I could gain a little bit more expertise, but it's close enough to being done that I don't mind talking about its inevitable release. I have a course called How to Buy an Italian Villa on Auction, and I have been getting some feedback from a current group that's going through the course right now, that helping me improve it. And so in probably some coming weeks, I'll be releasing that for anybody who's interested on participating in the auctions by themselves, for example. What it really does is helps you find the property, helps you understand what to look for, helps you understand the process, as well as some helpful hints, like I've mentioned today, on what to look for in order to not really lose your shirt when you're trying to do a project like this. What's really fun is that it's all public information. If you read Italian, you don't even need my course. You could just go learn it yourself. But I've been there, and I've had good and bad experiences, and thought I could share some expertise in the matter. And if anybody who is interested is welcome to reach out to me, and I'll put you on a waiting list.
Oh, that's fantastic. Good. Well, put me on the waiting list, because I really like to take that course.
Definitely.
Good. Okay, well, thank you so much for everything that you've given us today. I know it's taking time out of your schedule and whatnot, but it's just such valuable information. And frankly, I could talk about it all day, because I love Italian property and hearing all about it. So is there anything else you want to say to everybody out there?
Well, it's just been fun. My whole goal, and I don't know if anybody understands this, but it's just to bring a little bit of light to Italy. I think there's so much negative how do you say? I always use the word stereotypes, but there are so many things said by, whether you have an Italian friend or you've been to Italy once and you experienced something that isn't always completely true. You have to understand everybody has their own perspective, and everything comes from a little bit of truth, but depending on someone's perspective, maybe they don't think about things the way you think about things. So what it could be really a great experience for you might not have been for them, right? Mm-hmm. An example being most Italians probably wouldn't want to live in the South, but they don't know it from your perspective as perhaps a foreigner to this land, that Italy is actually very rewarding for someone who wants to retire here based on tax laws, that it's just so beautiful down there, and someone that doesn't need to rely on an income here in Italy, because that's that big hot issue, right? Is where do I find jobs? And that's what pushes people out of the South. And if people would stop that mentality and just create jobs in the South Italy, then the problem would be resolved, right?
Yeah.
But there are too many people following that same dogma that keeps Italy in that same path. So come on over if that's what you desire, I guess is what I'd like to say.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really, really great point. You know, and I have to say there are a couple of friends that we have that a young group of people. We're going to do a video when we get over there who took a destroyed building in the centro storico of Praia Mare, and 3 kids got together and renovated it into a beautiful B&B. And I really want to interview these kids because they're really inspirational. And,
Cool.
and you know, what they said was, we don't want to go to Milan to find work. We don't want to go to Rome. We want to make our work here. And they've been wildly popular. So they show that you can do that, you know? If we get a lot more people, well, we need people to come over and like build up the tourist section, which is happening, but then, you know, more people to make their work there so that these kids don't have to go off would be wonderful.
Something to add to that is that I think that's amazing. First of all, the initiative that they showed to stick around their own home. That most people would just have said, "Why don't you just move where the jobs are?" And especially here, that you need a job. You can't do this on your own, right? Mm-hmm. But Italy is not just vacation land. It could honestly support a lot of infrastructure if people, for example, right now is a time where remote working is becoming all the rage, right? People could come here, find an internet signal, start an online business, or they could come over here and start any type of business in a little community, and also do an online thing at the same time, right? Yeah. And it doesn't have to be related to the vacation industry. I think there are a lot of talented people that don't want to work in vacation here or in the hospitality industry here in Italy, but they're kind of forced to because that's the only thing anyone provides. Yeah. And like somebody who wants to build an app or a tech or become IT or over here, they have to go to a bigger city, but not anymore. Remote work.
And I think that's sort of the wave of the future, you know, that people can work from home wherever their home might be, which is really exciting.
That's beautiful. I think this is an interesting period to live in, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, me too. Well, thank you, Dave. I appreciate all your time and all your expertise and whatnot.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So, so thank you guys for joining us. Stay tuned to the channel. There's going to be a lot of really great information, and we'll see you soon.